Hi everyone, Kevin Williams from the Shore Sports Network, joined by Matt Manley, our main baseball reporter, as we talk a little high school baseball, 3.5 weeks into the season. Some interesting developments and certainly a lot of big games coming up. The weather is warming up. You're starting to feel like a little bit of baseball weather. I'm sure that's a pleasing thing to everyone, especially you sitting out there for 7 innings every day.
A little bit, although it seems like it's raining every weekend. So if you're looking to get out on Saturdays, it's always a roll of the dice with rain overnight and this, that, and the other. But that's part of the gig when it comes to baseball. But the warm weather is certainly welcome when you're standing out there. It helps to take off a layer. Yes, always looking forward to that.
Absolutely. So you're looking at the latest Shore Sports Network Top 10. You've had Jackson Memorial there all year long. And as we talk about them, coming off a shocking loss to Central Regional on Thursday, Manalapan has made this incredible climb all the way up to number 2. Could we see a change in the top 10? And of course, I know the week's not over yet.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler alert. Manalapan will have to go through the first 2 rounds of the Monmouth County tournament, weather permitting, over the weekend. It's going to be pretty hard to deny them at this point. I think with Jackson Memorial, they did lose a game earlier to Toms River North, but you do kind of have to account for the baseball happens sometimes. Like, teams lose in baseball, sometimes the teams that you may not expect. But the Central loss is a pretty stunning one for Jackson. It's another day where they just, balls are finding gloves, and on the other side the ball's finding some green. But credit to Central, the Central's been a lot more competitive over the course of the season with a lot of new starters after last year's group graduated. So you do kind of allow for losses like that to happen, but when one team like Manalapan just keeps winning and not slipping up, they haven't played quite the schedule that Jackson has, or at least they don't have some of the really good wins Jackson has, but they do have some really good ones. I mean, to beat Middletown South in dramatic fashion, which we had on the website last week, and they're going to have some games against CBA coming up. They haven't really slipped up. Well, they haven't slipped up at all, and they haven't really had those days that make you doubt them, and they're really starting to come together. So it's going to be hard to deny them, number one, despite how good Jackson has looked when they've looked good.
And I think baseball, more so than some other sports, upsets are really a regular part of the schedule. Bob Batters and I talking lacrosse, and those top teams almost always win those games. Baseball, you almost don't even call them upsets. If you play that many games, you're going to lose a couple, even to a team that might be inferior.
Yeah, it's cooked into the stew a little bit in baseball. It's just, if you watch any level of baseball, like teams that you wouldn't necessarily expect based on whatever rankings you want to do or talent on paper, they're going to get beat by some of those lesser teams sometimes. Jackson's really good. We haven't mentioned Wall yet. They've lost a couple games to teams that are around 500 or so. But those games are going to happen, and you kind of look to see the entire piece of the puzzle. Like, what does the pitching look like when the teams get to cut it down, and when the games really become important. And at this point, again, like, those teams will be there at the end. I still think they will be, but when you're talking about a top 10 and you have a team like Manalapan who's off to the start they are, it's hard to deny them what they've accomplished this year, which is putting themselves in that discussion with Jackson Memorial, with a Wall, with maybe like a Red Bank Catholic, and a Jackson Liberty as you start to get into that next tier of teams.
Wall 3, RBC 4, and looking at the rest of your top 10, Toms River North, Jackson Liberty, Manasquan, Middletown South, CBA, and Colts Neck. Who would be the surprise team for you that's there right now?
I think Toms River North, because of, they didn't lose a whole ton of kids like maybe a Central did, but the guys they lost were so integral to their team last year. Top pitchers, middle of the order hitters. And the word on them was that they were a work in progress in the preseason. They got beat up by a couple teams against a very tough scrimmage schedule. That's the one thing you can say about that program under Andy Pagano, is they go out and play teams, and you've seen it early on. They beat Jackson. They went down and played a King's Christian team that has a lot of talent and beat them. They played St. Augustine to a 1-run loss. So they've really grown up quickly. It's not a pitching staff that's going to wow you, but they've been a wily staff. I won't even say that they've always attacked batters, because they'll walk some guys and pitch around it. But the lineup is gelled. They run the bases. Greg learned a good story about how they've been a more aggressive team on the bases. So I think they've changed their identity a little bit, and it's really worked. They did lose to Brick Memorial early in the week, but like we said, those games happen. Brick Memorial is a team that I thought maybe would get off to a better start, or at least have a pretty good year despite their slow start, so you may see them start to pick things up a little bit too. Not a stunning loss when you consider that North is kind of a work in progress despite their strong start, and Brick Memorial should be better than, I think they'll be better over the course of the season as well with some of the experience they have from coming back from last year.
When you happen to share the same town in which you have the winningest coach in New Jersey history, Ken Frank at Toms River South, maybe you fly under the radar a little bit, but I think Andy Pagano's done an amazing job building that program. I like you, they lost so many good players from a team that won a lot of championships last year. Expected, well, maybe by the end of the year, maybe by the middle of May. And here they are, based on what's happened yesterday, tied for the Class A South League with Jackson Memorial.
Right, and when he took over for Ted Shelmay, there really wasn't like a step back in talent. Like the talent kept flowing into the program, and there's still talent there now. But I think when you see the guys they lost, like Craig Larson, who's doing really well at Penn right now, Jared Bellissimo is doing a good job at Rutgers, and you have Brennan Mullins, who was, it's an all-shore pitcher last year, and he's at Penn State now. Those are some major pieces to lose, especially when they're middle of the order hitters. Larson's playing a great shortstop, and you have three big pitchers when you get Larson into the mix. So, moving on to this year's team, they have some good players who had experience from that team, but this was the first time you really said, okay, what can Toms River North do when the talent isn't like overwhelming compared to the rest of the shore? And they've answered the bell. Like I mentioned, they did lose this week to Brick Memorial, but those games, you had to figure that game was coming soon because it comes for everybody other than Manalapan so far. So they've been doing well. And you mentioned Toms River South. They're kind of the opposite of Toms River North, and then they've been kind of taking care of business. They did lose to Brick the other day, but they had gone on a nice winning streak after getting beat pretty good by Jackson Memorial. But the difference there is, like, you look at who Toms River North has beaten on their docket versus who Toms River South has beaten. North beat Jackson, they beat Kings Christian, they played St. Augustine. So the schedule to me is what separated Toms River North from Toms River South. Mm-hmm. They're going to play each other at the end of next week, and that's going to be a really telling series because I think South is a top 10 caliber team. Right. I don't think there's any question about it. It's just there's a big jumble right now, and some of the teams on that list might have some more standout wins than Toms River South at this point, but South's going to get their chance to prove themselves coming up.
Which of the division races are the ones you find most intriguing? We mentioned Jackson and North are now tied. In A North, Manalapan's got a 2-game lead over Middletown South. In A Central, RBC's got a 2-game lead over Manasquan. B North, Ocean and Wall are tied. Colts Neck is in the picture. B Central, Point Beach and Mater Dei Prep are tied. And in B South, Jackson Liberty has a 1-game lead over Point Borough. Which of those do you find most interesting and will be following the next couple of weeks for sure?
That's a good question because going into the year, I thought there were 5 clear favorites, and like the 5, B Central, I guess, was way up in the air with St. Rose leaving the division. But with the other 5 divisions, A North, A Central, A South, B North, and B South, I thought all of those had clear favorites. The team that looks like the most clear favorite out of that, RBC I think has established itself, but like Manalapan's got a pretty nice lead right now, and I thought they were the second best team. I thought they would challenge CBA, but if they beat CBA 1 out of 2 times next week, it's going to be hard for anybody to catch Manalapan. So unless CBA can get a sweep, Manalapan might roll there. As far as like the most compelling race, I think Jackson Liberty Point Borough play next week. That's going to determine the division the way it looks right now. So that's an interesting series to see who wins it. Other than that, like B North got really interesting with Wall losing this week to Neptune because now all of a sudden those teams are tied. Ocean's been kind of handling its business, not losing the teams, whereas Wall slipped up against Colts Neck, who Ocean already beat twice, and you do have Colts Neck still lurking there and winning a lot of games. So I think B North's interesting because those teams have played each other already, and Wall's shown you that they can be picked off. Whereas Ocean's been kind of Ocean's only 2 losses are to Wall. Right. So that's going to be kind of a war of attrition there. But I think the most interesting race has got to be right now B South because those 2 teams are about to play each other. Point Borough and Jackson Liberty play next week. And that's pretty much going to be what determines the division at this point. All right,
so you used a word just a little while ago that is a word that was never used in baseball locally, and that is series.
Yeah.
And this year a little change to the schedule. Division rivals playing back-to-back games. You mentioned like Jackson Memorial beat Toms River South first 2 games of the season. And if you're a South fan, you're already 2 games out of first and you haven't even gotten through the first week. The motivation behind that, and what's the general consensus you've received from coaches?
The consensus is that they like it, but the thing you mentioned about playing a team the first week of the season, being done with it, that's the one thing that feels a little wrong about it. Is that if you're Toms River South, you have it's 45 degrees. You play the best team, one of the best teams in the state, twice to start the year. They clean your clock twice. And that's your shot to beat them. Whereas, maybe now is the best time to get them. And it really becomes about the timing as opposed to like, all right, you play one team first time, and then maybe the second time you're closer to what you're going to be at the end of the year, and then you face each other again. Now, it's like if you play that first week, if Jackson could have found a way to beat Toms River North that second time, the East South race basically would have been over at that point. I mean, they pretty much would have won it in the first week of the season. But they didn't, and now we still have a race. The motivation behind it, I think, is just the Greater Middlesex Conference did this a couple years ago, and I think the coaches have been talking about it for a while, just to make it so that you can't stack pitching against certain teams, and you can make it so that against certain teams, like you don't have to face the same pitcher both times you play a team. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to face their staff, and it's basically a way to say, all right, let's not make this about who lines up their pitching against whom. It's about, okay, you're going to face the two best pitchers or two different pitchers in each of the two games. And I think everybody kind of likes that so far. I like it. I like a lot about it other than what we just talked about. One of the things that I've heard as an idea is that maybe instead of, and this would work in mine, maybe instead of starting the year with some of these big series like a Jackson, Toms River South, maybe you start the year with non-conference games, a week of non-conference games, maybe even the Monmouth County tournament, because that tournament's seeded after 4 or 5 games anyway. There's not a good sample size to really go on as it is, so why not seed it in the preseason like you would a Christmas tournament in basketball, and then start it the first week of the season? I mean, those are important games too, but I think it's already treated like a second-class tournament because, like, oh, well, we can't play a Monmouth County game instead of a division game or a non-division game. So we're already not giving it priority, so why not just bump it up to the first week of the season and have that first week of the season be like a soft landing into the second week where you start to play division.
It's almost like a preseason tournament, in essence.
It's seeded like that. Yeah, and then you play it this weekend, it begins in earnest this weekend, and teams, you rank CBA 8th. CBA has losses it happens every year. Some good teams start slow, they get seeded number 8th, and then the number 1 seed has to play them. And it would make more sense to just say, all right, let's look at these teams on paper in the preseason. Who's good? Who looks good? Let's seed it on that. Let's not go on 1 or 1.5 week of results. Because anything can happen.
And especially that 1.5 weeks is often around here played in miserable weather, miserable conditions. Yeah. What's your thoughts on the Monmouth County tournament? Is there a clear-cut favorite, or is that one, because of the way the seedings were done, it really becomes a crapshoot?
Well, if Wall could get going offensively, where they had like 4 or 5 guys hot, they're going to be hard to beat because their pitching is very good. Like there are a couple losses they had this year. They did give up some runs to Colts Neck. Colts Neck is a team that can hit, and they're kind of the opposite. If they can figure out their pitching, they're dangerous, and they're a 12 seed, and Manasquan is going to have their hands full with Colts Neck on Saturday, assuming they get all the games in, whenever they play. But so Wall, if they catch the ball and they can put some offense together, they're really hard to beat because they have so much pitching. But they've shown some vulnerabilities over the first couple weeks of the season. They don't have a lights out, devastating offense, and pitching wise, they haven't been invincible. They've been really good, but they haven't been invincible. So they're the number 1 seed and they deserve to be, but they're not a lock. RBC also has a lot of really good arms, and they're hoping to get Dave Glancy back into the mix now, who was an all-shore outfielder last year, broke the hamate bone in his hand, and he's been working his way back. They should have him for the bulk of that tournament, but they might have to get through without him being 100% and for the first weekend. But they're really dangerous with the arms they have if they can get that offense going, much like Wall. Manalapan, they're finding ways to win, and their pitching is deeper than maybe we thought it would be going into the year. They had some guys with good arms and with ability, but the only real proven guy going into the year was Ben Levine. Now they have Aaron Ayers throwing really well. Chris Nichols, a junior who has been lights out of the bullpen. So they have that staff now. They catch the ball well. They've got an offense with guys like Mike Hoover and Jake Plecchia and Nick Pietrantonio. It's a sorry, it's a mouthful. DP Trantonio. But they have a lot of guys who can beat you in a lot of ways to beat you, so they're going to be a team to watch too. But those are the three that stand out to me, and CBA is always lurking because they've got some arms too that could cause problems to the teams that draw them.
In wrapping up, I'm going to throw you a little bit on the spot, and there's a lot of baseball left. I mean, we're not even a month technically into the season from when we started. Give me 2 or 3 everyday players and 2 or 3 pitchers that, let's say right now, would be the early favorites for consideration maybe as a player of the year, pitcher of the year.
Well, Trey Dombrowski is the reigning pitcher of the year, and he's done nothing to give up that title. He's been absolutely lights out. He hasn't given up an earned run yet. He gave up a run in a game the other day that rained in the first inning, and they called it. I can't say for sure whether it was earned or not, but even so, like that on a technicality, his slate is clean. The ERA is 0 after another dominant 6 innings the other day, and he's been great. He's been topping out in the high 80s. He's getting some serious looks from some of the pro scouts on top of the fact that he's committed to Monmouth. The velocity's not, it doesn't catch your eye when you look at the gun, but his pitchability is as good as there is. I mean, I kind of did the story on him last year comparing what he did to what Luca Delatri did, and there's not as big a difference as you might think given how good Luca was. With Luca, it was about the wins and the dominance from kind of start to finish of his career, but Dombrowski's been pretty much untouchable these last couple years, and he's definitely that guy at the top. And as far as, other guys, Alex Idiscernia with Jackson Memorial and Amir Cornier with Jackson Memorial have been off the scorching starts. They've been kind of the 2 guys driving that ship as seniors on a team with a lot of juniors. Yeah. The juniors have been great. Guys like Ryan Lasko has had a great year, Christian Pallone. But those 2 seniors there's just been almost no let up with the way they've hit the ball in the lineup for them, and Cornier playing shortstop as well. So those 2 guys on Jackson, so you have those Jackson and Wall guys. RBC's been kind of a committee situation right now. Vin Bianchi's probably their most talented guy, playing shortstop for them and hitting, but hasn't really hit a ton yet. But he plays a great shortstop, has pitched well, lost some tough games against tough teams. The guy who's looked really good is Shane Panzini, the sophomore, has really come into his own and looks like going to be that next guy who's the guy to beat for pitcher of the year once Dombrowski's out of here. But those and the one guy I want to mention who's on fire right now is Dave Melfi from Jackson Liberty, who leads the Shore in doubles. He's just been a hit machine. He became the program's first 100-hit player last week, and he's on a tear right now. Jackson Liberty is beating that division up right now. He's had a great year every year he's been in high school, but this year he's gone up to that next level where you can't really get him out at this point.
That's Matt Manley, and if you want to follow high school baseball, you got to follow Matt right on shore.youtube as well as Twitter and everything else. He spends every day, Monday through Sunday, if there's a baseball game, he's liable to be out there for sure. Want to mention that Coltsnet was our Jersey Mike's Team of the Week, so congratulations to them. And our baseball coverage continues right through the end of the season on shore.youtube, so check us out each and every day. Thank you, everyone.